Good morning. Is this working? Please start taking your seats. The meeting is going to start in 5 minutes. Please be seated.
Colleagues, please be seated. Thank you.
Kindly take your seats, please. We're about to start. Good morning. Please take your seats. kindly take your seats, please? We are about to start. Good morning. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. The CITES Secretariat is delighted to welcome you to the CICG here in Geneva. Before the opening of the 77th meeting of the Standing Committee, the Secretariat has some important news to share with you. The representative of the chair of the committee, which is the United States, and the representative was Ms. Rosemary Naim, had a small accident on Friday morning, hurting her knee badly. She has had to go back to the United States for surgery. She's doing fine in the circumstances. We wish her a full and speedy recovery. In accordance with the rules of procedure, the chair of the Standing Committee, which is the United States of America, has officially appointed a new representative to replace Ms. Rosemary Naim in the chairing of the Standing Committee to allow this meeting to go ahead. I therefore have the pleasure to introduce Ms. Naima Aziz, head of the Division of Management Authority of the United States Fish and Wildlife Service. Ms. Aziz, congratulations, you have the floor.
Thank you, Secretariat. Good morning. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the 77th meeting of the CITES Standing Committee in Geneva. A special thanks to the CITES Secretariat for their organization of the meeting and the country of Switzerland for hosting the meeting in this fine venue. As you can see, I am not Dr. Rosemary Naim. As the Secretary had stated, Rose suffered an injury here in Geneva on Friday and had to return to the United States for treatment. She had prepared diligently for months to expertly chair this meeting. Rose sends her deepest regrets for not being here with you this week. For those of you who I have not met, which is a fair amount, I'd like to briefly introduce myself to you as chair. I am Naima Aziz, the head of the Management Authority in the United States. I have been involved in CITES for almost 2 decades, albeit most of that time in CITES enforcement, and more recently in policy with the United States Management Authority. I owe a huge debt of gratitude to the U.S. CITES policy team, who has not only graciously shared their collective over 1,200 years of experience implementing this beloved convention with me, but for also adapting as a delegation to support me in this role. I am grateful to the United States government and the Secretariat for their support over these last 2 days and their confidence in me to chair this meeting. I am humbled to be here and appreciate your trust and patience with me as I try to address this packed agenda of over more than 70 important items. I promise to do my best in executing the duties of this position and to make Rosemary, my Management Authority team, and my country proud. A few thoughts on how I expect us to proceed through the agenda that the Secretariat has organized. I hope we have robust civil discussions that further our common goals of conserving our biodiversity while supporting a legal, traceable, and biologically sustainable trade in wild plants and animals. Per the rules of procedure, I will call upon Standing Committee members to speak first, followed by observer parties, and then IGOs and NGOs. I hope interventions will be concise and address the agenda documents and its recommendations. If previous speakers have made similar points to yours, please align with them and do not repeat the points. I am conscious of the amount of time we have over the next 5 days and wish to be fair in allotting time to all speakers. I ask for your cooperation and respect for your fellow speakers. There will be times where views may differ, and I ask you act civilly and be tolerant of divergent opinions. At the end of our discussions, I hope we will be able to come together, negotiate our differences, and have consensus on decisions that we can all accept and implement. After my summary of discussions and my proposal to move forward on decisions, if there is silence from the Standing Committee members, I will take that as agreement. However, if we cannot reach a consensus, rules of procedure, rule number 15 will govern how our decisions will be made in those rare instances where a vote may be called. I hope we do not need to have any votes, so I ask for your grace and understanding as we find consensus on these issues. After this, I wish you all a productive meeting as we demonstrate that CITES, after 50 years, is robust and effective in achieving its mission now as it was then. Thank you. And I'll pass the floor to the Secretary General.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning to all, distinguished Standing Committee members, parties, and observers, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to all as we convene for the 77th meeting of the Standing Committee. Thank you for your presence and your support. Our warm thanks to Switzerland, who so generously support us financially to be able to hold the meeting here at the CICG. On behalf of the Secretariat, may I express our sadness for what happened to Rose, and we send our best wishes to her for a fast recovery. And we warmly welcome and congratulate the United States nomination of their new representative, Ms. Naima Aziz, as the chair of the committee. Madam Chair, the Secretariat is available to give you our full support. As you know, CITES is celebrating its 50th anniversary since its signing in 1973 in Washington, D.C. Over these 5 decades, CITES has achieved significant milestones and steadfastly worked towards ensuring the legal and sustainable trade of wild flora and fauna. We salute all who have devoted their time, some even a lifetime, to this convention. It is therefore with a heavy heart that I share the somber news of the passing of Dr. Robert Hank Jenkins. Dr. Jenkins was an integral part of the convention's work for over a decade. He was elected and dutifully served as the CITES Animals Committee representative for Oceania from 1989 to 1992. Subsequently, he assumed the role of CITES Animals Committee chair from 1992 until his retirement at the 11th Conference of the Parties in 2000. I kindly ask all of you to take part in a minute of silence to pay tribute to his memory and express our gratitude for his outstanding contributions. May he rest in peace. 717 participants have registered for this meeting, representing 97 parties, including the committee members, alternates, and observer parties, as well as IGO and NGO observers. It's the largest standing committee ever and shows the importance of this convention. You have a considerable amount of work ahead of you as we delve into the review of strategic policy and species-specific matters that impact the implementation of the convention. There are 77 items on the agenda, along with 101 related documents spanning over 2,701 pages, covering a wide array of critical issues. Navigating this substantial workload will be a genuine challenge, but we know our chair will be great, and we ask you for your patience and to support her by keeping interventions concise and respectful. I would like to thank the chairs of the scientific committees, the chairs of the intersessional working groups, and my dream team at the CITES Secretariat for their tireless efforts in preparing these documents. It is my duty, however, to again ask you to reflect deeply on the ever-increasing workload that is stretching our human and financial resources too thinly. Prioritization is now a critical and urgent matter. I deeply apologize for the delay in some documents despite the diligence of the Secretariat. We have done what is humanly possible given the program of work, the technical meetings, the technical assistance and exchanges with parties, work with our partners, and the administrative demands on this small Secretariat. I am, as always, grateful to those participating in the scientific committees who give their time so generously. Special thanks to our donors, including the European Union, Germany, Sweden, Switzerland, the UK, and the US, for their generous contribution that made all of this possible. I want to extend equal gratitude to the enthusiastic participants and the teams working on the meetings of the Big Cats Task Force and the African Carnivores Initiative in Nairobi, the joint meeting of the Standing Committee working groups on IPLC engagement and livelihoods in Peru, the CITES ESCAP Regional Workshop on Electronic Permitting Systems in Bangkok, the CITES Asian Regional Training Seminar on Demand Reduction Strategies in Singapore, the CITES Jaguar Range State Meeting in Cuiabá, Brazil, as well as the upcoming online workshops on amphibians, the International Expert Workshop on Non-Detriment Findings in Nairobi, and the International Technical Workshop on Songbirds in Bangkok. The committee will address several crucial topics requiring thoughtful consideration. There are compliance matters, what makes CITES known as the Convention with Teeth, ranging from illegal trade in live birds and shark specimens to the management and trade of African teak. Furthermore, we will review the implementation of provisions related to the trade in captive bred specimens of species listed in Appendix 1. The committee will also consider emerging operational issues, CITES' role in pandemic risk reduction, contributions to the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, engagement with women, indigenous peoples, and local communities, and conservation and sustainable trade for various species. These species encompass marine creatures such as sharks, rays, marine turtles, and totoaba, as well as terrestrial animals like saiga antelopes, Tibetan antelopes, jaguars, rhinoceroses, great apes, and timber tree species. The agenda includes matters related to big cats facilities, illegal trade in big cats, and a range of elephant-related issues, such as the African Elephant Range State Dialogue and the possible recognition of 2 African elephant species within CITES. It is also important that there is a mechanism in place through which the next generation has the opportunity to be informed and engaged in the work of CITES. And that's why we are also going to discuss youth engagement and the CITES Global Youth Network. Almost a year has passed since the 19th meeting of the Conference of the Parties and the last meeting of the Standing Committee, and so much has happened during this year, including the adoption of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework in December 2022. Now, in 2023, we find ourselves at the halfway point towards the 2030 deadline for achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. It's encouraging to witness an increased focus on environmental conservation and more dedicated to advancing sustainable development. CITES plays a pivotal role in ensuring the conservation and sustainable use of wildlife, a role that has long been acknowledged. To meet these SDG targets, however, we must redouble our efforts on national, regional, and global fronts. Let us also not forget the fundamental importance of partnerships. Sustainable development, biodiversity conservation, and the responsible utilization of biodiversity components are all interdependent and require a united, coordinated, multilateral effort. Finally, since the committee last met, the Secretariat has bid farewell to Migresh Katrilla, Milena Sosa-Schmidt, David Morgan, Noemi Reyes, Tanya McGregor, and Bernard Koesch, and we extend our heartfelt thanks for their valuable contributions. Today, we extend a warm welcome to Mr. Thomas Delure, Ms. Elizabeth Warui, and Ms. Siri Makele, who have recently joined the Secretariat, as well as to Ms. Sophie Flensburg and Ms. Tia Carroll for temporarily taking up new roles. We are fortunate to be able to benefit from their knowledge and expertise. I wish you a productive and enjoyable 5 days ahead. I have no doubt that you will seize this opportunity and collaborate constructively, leading us toward a harmonious coexistence with nature. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I will now turn the floor over to the Secretariat for some housekeeping items.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Geneva. Just very few remarks because we are using a new system that we haven't used in CICG before, which is the mapping against the microphones, which means that you cannot move your placard to somewhere else where you want to be next to the person you like. You have to stay where your placard is, or we will not be able to understand who's asking for the floor. So that's just a reminder, don't move around your flags. As the chair mentioned, she will call upon, or she will open the floor for speakers in the order of the rules of procedure. So first, standing committee members, then observer parties, IGOs, and NGOs. You are invited not to request the floor until the chair has opened the floor for your group of delegations. So just wait until the chair opens the floor for observer parties, IGO, etc. Once you request the floor, you don't have to raise your placard, you just press the button and your delegation name will show up on the screen of the chair. When your chair calls upon you to take the floor, you don't have to press a button. The technicians will open your microphone and give you the floor. When you conclude your remarks, however, please do press the button and indicate that you have concluded your remarks. So I hope that's clear. Your microphone will turn green when you have requested the floor, and it will turn red when it's on and ready for you to take the floor. Final comment, if your delegation as a party registered less than a week ago, you know we have a week before the meeting as a deadline in the rules of procedure. If your delegation registered less than a week ago, you will not be mapped, and so you will not have a place to sit, and you will not yet have a microphone with your name against it. We will make sure that this happens in the first break after you have joined the meeting, but as you arrive late and at the first session where you're here, we will not be able to recognize you with this system of mapping. It takes a break for us to update the system. I hope this is clear to everybody, but we will get through it as we get used to this new system. So that's all from the household at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretariat. We will start the meeting with agenda item number 1, document 1, the agenda. I open the floor to the committee for any comments on the agenda. Next to observer parties. And finally to observer organizations. Okay, the committee notes the agenda as set out in document number 1. The next item is document number 2, agenda item 2, adoption of the work program. I give the floor to the Secretariat to propose 4 small changes in relation to the work program.
Thank you, Chair. So after the adoption of the agenda, the committee is invited to adopt the working program. The working program is set out in document number 2. I hope you will appreciate we try to make it a little more easy to follow with this new format. It may be a little bit hard to find your agenda item, but it's more easy to have the overview of the whole week. So it's set out in document 2, as I said. The Secretariat has been invited to make a couple of comments and a couple of small changes to the working program that I will read out now. If the committee agrees to these small changes, we will issue a revision of the working program as well as other changes that will be requested during this agenda item. We will issue a revision just after the adoption of the working program. So the working program has been made in an effort to be a more meaningful and combine issues that go together, so that you have, and it's been published in good time, so to allow members and observers to plan their travel and their interventions during the meeting. Since we published the working program, some delegations have asked us to make a couple of very minor changes, and these are the following. On Monday, so today, the agenda item 27 on the establishment of the CITES Youth Global Network will be considered immediately after agenda item 7. So it's in the same session, just a little bit earlier in the session. We will come to agenda item 27 just after agenda item 7. And Singapore will explain to you why this was important to do so. Under agenda item 33.1, which is also on the working program for today, there is a part of the document that concerns a potential compliance matter in relation to the United Kingdom of Great Britain and the Northern Ireland. This is contained in that paragraph, in that document, and that part will be considered in conjunction with document 33.8 on a potential compliance matter and application of Article 13 in the European Union. So the 33.1 will be today, but the parts relating to a potential compliance matter with regard to United Kingdom will be together with document 33.8. Finally, for today, agenda item 33.9 on the application of Article 13 in Guinea will have to be taken up at a later stage and not today, as Guinea was not able to obtain a visa to arrive in Geneva today. So we will put Guinea off until Thursday, Thursday morning, just after agenda item 44, just before, sorry, agenda item 44. So Guinea will be on Thursday and not today. Finally, on Wednesday, the agenda item 66 on eels will not be considered on Wednesday, but will be considered at 2 o'clock on Thursday. So we postpone item 66 to Thursday, and you will understand on Thursday why we had to do this. So with these are the small amendments we'd have to do, considering these different circumstances that we're not able to foresee. And of course, the working program remains indicative. The Secretariat notes that we're also trying to, as you will see, put the agenda item on the screen so that it's possible for you to understand at all times where we are on the agenda. We hope that this is facilitating your participation in the meeting. As I said, we will issue a revision of the working program as soon as it has been adopted. I thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Secretariat. On the adoption of the working program, I open the floor for comments to the Standing Committee first. Next to observer parties. Oh, I'm sorry, Madagascar. You have the floor.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for giving me the floor. Just a question from Madagascar on subject 33.12. As our head of delegation is still traveling, we would like to request that it could be delayed. Thank you.
Thank you, Madagascar. A question, when will they be arriving?
Ce sera prévu pour...
They are expected to arrive tomorrow.
Next up, observer parties. Oh, New Zealand. You have the floor as part of the committee.
Thank you. This is just a technical matter. None of us know how to turn on the translate function. Could you give us some advice, please? Thank you.
I will turn it over to the Secretariat to provide some more instructions.
Thank you, New Zealand. We'll have somebody come and show you because our screens look slightly different from yours. So I can't tell you exactly how it works on your screens, but the technician will show you. Can you please show New Zealand?
Sorry about that. So you should see the little headphone thing, which has plus minus. And if I understand correctly, the two buttons that are unmarked next to it should allow you to change the language. Just wave if there's a problem and the technician can come and help you.
Thank you, Secretariat. I will now take comments on the working program from observer parties. Ukraine, do you have comments regarding the working program?
Thank you, Chair. It's not the comment on the working program, but if you could allow us to speak after the adoption of the working program, it's general comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Ukraine. We will have time at the end of the meeting for all general comments. Right now, we'll be taking comments on the working program. Next, I give the floor to India.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As India is taking the floor for the first time, India wishes to thank the Chair, Standing Committee, and the Secretariat for the 77th meeting of the Standing Committee. India also wishes to thank the government of Switzerland for their hospitality in this beautiful city of Geneva. Madam Chair, as we note from the working program schedule, document 31 on the national legislation has been presently scheduled for 9th November afternoon session. National legislation is an important compliance matter of the CITES, which also factors in capacity building of parties for developing robust CITES-related legislations. Decision 19.62, paragraph C, which is directed to the Secretariat, entail requirement of capacity building of the parties who are yet to be in Category 1. The agenda documents 23.1, 23.2, and 23.3 on capacity building have been scheduled for the first day forenoon session, and the national legislation agenda requires to be discussed prior to taking up documents 23.1, 23.2, and 23.3, thereby giving a logical continuity in discussion for the committee. India therefore requests the committee to consider shifting the agenda on national legislation to the first day schedule. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, India. I now give the floor to observer organizations. I see we have a placard up. I see the Democratic Republic of Congo has their placard up. I give the floor to you.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As the Democratic Republic of the Congo is speaking for the first time, I would like to congratulate the Chair on the Standing Committee on her appointment. and thank the government of Switzerland for their legendary hospitality and the Secretariat for all the work. Congratulations on all the technical work and the preparation of documents. On point 33.6, the application of Article 13 in the DRC, I wanted to ask of the Secretariat and the Chair if there is a way of postponing this maybe to tomorrow, if possible, because we have a delegation from my country which is expected and will be arriving just at the very beginning of the afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, the DRC. Any other comments on the working program? Thank you. Please give me one moment. Thank you. So in regards to the change proposed by Madagascar to move agenda item 33.12 to tomorrow, that is for the committee. The Secretariat thinks that's a reasonable request. In regards to the DRC request for document 33.6, that is scheduled to be talked about this afternoon, and we can move it to the end of the agenda for this afternoon to allow time for your delegates to arrive. And in regards to India's request for Doc 31 to be moved to today to talk about it in line with the capacity building documents, I would note that there are a few parties affected by the recommendations for the National Legislation Project. And so I would ask those parties to comment on their thoughts about moving it from Thursday to today. Also looking for thoughts from the committee if they are okay with these changes. Ecuador, I see you have your placard up. Would you like to make some comments?
Thank you, Madam Chair. As it's the first time I'm speaking, first of all, I'd like to join in congratulating you on your nomination and thanking the Secretary General and Switzerland as our host country for this meeting of the Standing Committee. As you have indicated, there are some delegations with interest in the subject, the item that it was suggested be moved from Thursday to today. But based on the planning that we have already planned in some delegations, we would request that the item remains as had been planned in the original working programme, with the indulgence of the distinguished delegation of India. And in terms of the other suggested amendments to the items on the agenda, we have no objection. Thank you.
Thank you, Ecuador. So I'm going to turn to the committee now for these suggestions from the parties. What are their thoughts on the Madagascar proposal to move item 33.12 to tomorrow? All right, looks good. Thank you. With regards to the India proposal to move document 33.1 to today to talk about them alongside the capacity building agenda items, the committee does not agree with that. And in regards to the DRC proposal and the Secretariat's amendment to have the document 33.6 talked about towards the end of the day to allow the DRC delegation to be here and be present. Agree with that? Thank you. The working program has been adopted as set out in document 2 as amended by the Secretariat and with the proposal from Madagascar as well as the DRC. Thank you, committee. And just to note that the revision will come out during the break and be available for the second session. Thank you. Next item is item number 3, Rules of Procedure, document 3. The rules of procedure remain valid for each meeting and no changes have been proposed. The committee notes the rules of procedure as set out in annex to document SC 77.3 and remain valid for this meeting. Next, agenda item number 4, credentials. I give the floor to the Secretariat.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And this is a provisional report because we're still receiving credentials from members and alternate members that are the ones that we are checking now in accordance with Rule 5 of the Rules of Procedure. So far, we have 17 credentials confirmed from Australia, Belgium, Canada, the Republic Democratic of the Congo, Georgia, Honduras, India, Indonesia, Ireland, Japan, Kenya, Kuwait, Morocco, New Zealand, Nicaragua, Singapore, and Zambia. But we're still checking the credentials, and we will be able to report at the beginning of the afternoon session. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Secretariat. I'm going to turn to the members of the committee first for comments. Any comments from the Standing Committee? Any comments from observer parties? Any comments from observer organizations? Okay, the committee notes the oral report from the Secretariat. Next is agenda item number 5, a mission of observers, document 5. Again, I give the floor to the Secretariat.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Document SC 77.5 contains the list of observer organizations invited to attend the session. the Secretariat notes that the International Air Transport Association, IATA, should be added to this list. The Standing Committee is invited to take note of the list of observer organisations invited to attend the session as contained in the annex to document SC 77 Doc 5. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Secretariat. Any comments from the Standing Committee? Observer parties? Observer organizations? The committee notes the list of observer organizations attending the meeting as set out in annex to the document number 5. Next item is item number 6, report of the chairs of the Animals and Plants Committee, document number 6. I will first give the floor to the Secretariat since the chair and vice chairs of the Plants Committee will not be in attendance for this meeting. Secretariat.
Thank you, Chair. Document SC 77 Doc 6 was submitted by the chairs of the Animals and the Plants Committee. The Secretariat is presenting the report of the chair of the Plants Committee on behalf of Ms. Flor Comba, who could unfortunately not attend the present meeting. In section 1 of the document, its chair has outlined the outcomes of the 26th meeting of the Plants Committee, highlighting the items that are relevant to the Standing Committee and subject to a separate agenda item at the present meeting. And for those items that are strictly relating to flora mandates, these comprise the following items that will be discussed throughout this week: CITES and Forest, the CITES Tree Species Program, the review of significant trade in Appendix 2 species, and the implementation of the recommendations of the Plants Committee, a document on products containing specimens of Appendix 2 orchids, and a document on information system for trade in specimens of CITES listed tree species. Other issues that need to be reported to the Standing Committee but that are not subject to a standalone agenda items for SC 77 are detailed in paragraphs 7 to 24 of the document. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Secretariat. I'll now give the floor to the chair of the Animals Committee.
Thank you, Chair. As chair of the Animals Committee, but also as Switzerland, I would like to thank the Secretariat for the excellent preparation, as always, of this meeting, and would also echo the concerns raised by the Secretary General about the ever-increasing amount of documents and work that have to be prepared and dealt with, and the concerns how long this can go on without adequate support of this for the Secretariat. I also like to congratulate you, Chair of the Standing Committee, for your election and for your courage to take up this on such a short notice. Section 2 of document SC 77 Doc 6 details the outcomes of the AC 32 issues that are requiring inputs or are for information of the Standing Committee. The issues discussed at AC 32 that are relevant to the Standing Committee and subject of a separate agenda item for its 77th meeting are indicated in paragraph 25 in the table. They concern the review of significant trade in specimens of Appendix 2 species, review of trade in animal specimens reported as produced in captivity, saiga antelopes, eels, sharks and rays, West African vultures, and queen conch. In paragraphs 26 to 47 are other issues for information of the Standing Committee. It's on Animals Committee strategic planning, African lions, leopards, seahorses, pangolins, trade in stony corals, use of coded microchip implants for marking live animals in trade, and definition of the term appropriate and acceptable destinations, conservation of amphibians, songbird trade and conservation management, non-detriment findings for specimens of Appendix II species taken from areas beyond national jurisdiction, aquatic species listed in the appendices, and zoological nomenclature. Section 3 details the outcomes of the joint items from Animals Committee Meeting 32 and PC 26. The issues that are relevant to the Standing Committee and subject of a separate agenda item are indicated in table in paragraph 48. They concern emerging operational matters of the committees, CITES strategic vision, cooperation with IPBES, including policy aspects of the assessment report on the sustainable use of wild species, role of CITES in reducing risk of future zoonotic disease emergence associated with international wildlife trade, transport of live specimens, specimens produced through biotechnology, review of CITES provisions related to trade in specimens of animals and plants not of wild source, identifying information on species at risk of extinction affected by international trade, and annotations. Other issues of relevance or interest for the Standing Committee are detailed in paragraphs 49 to 54, and they concern country-wide review of significant trade, trade in medicinal and aromatic plant species, periodic reviews of species included in Appendices 1 and 2, botanical and zoological nomenclature. So the recommendations are the Standing Committee is invited to note the information in this document. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I will now give the floor to committee members for comments on the document. Next to observer parties. Belgium, you have the floor.
Thank you. As it's the first time I take the floor, I want to congratulate you with your appointment as chair and also thank Switzerland for being a generous host. We look forward to a fruitful meeting. I would also like to mention that every time Belgium or Poland takes the floor during this standing committee, we speak on behalf of the EU and its 27 member states. Regarding agenda item 6, we would like to thank both committees for the good and important work they are doing to show support for the work of the technical committees. Thank you.
Thank you, Belgium. I give the floor to India.
Thank you, Madam Chair. India has repeatedly voiced its concern regarding any decision leading to Appendix II listing of the entire Boswellia genus. All the recommendations contained in Annex 1 of PC 26, Doc 28.1 also emphasized against genus listing of Boswellia in Appendix 2. Further, India, as part of the Intersessional Working Group on Boswellia constituted by the PC 26, had informed that the Botanical Survey of India has given all the data information available in Herbaria of India to the Boswellia project team in Royal Botanical Garden, Edinburgh. It was also informed that Boswellia serrata is a common plant occurring in India with very high population. The major species in trade can be clearly distinguished from each other by a combination of chemical markers, characteristic compositions, and molecular ratios. This indicates the fact that identification of different species of Boswellia can easily be met. The parties in the Intersessional Working Group should take note of the above facts while developing or proposing any draft decision. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, India. Indonesia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Since this is the first time Indonesia is taking the floor, we would like to commend and appreciate the government of Switzerland and Madam SG and her excellent team for the excellent arrangement. Secondly, we are saddened to hear that Rosemary is not able to join us due to her accident, and we hope she gets better. And Indonesia welcomes and wishes good luck to Naomi for as SG chair for our session. And finally, we look forward to engaging and work together with the fellow SG parties as well as non-parties as well as observers to have the best outcome possible for this SC. On this agenda, Indonesia takes note on the report of the chair of both committees, and we thank and agree with the recommendation of both committees in this regard. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Indonesia. Any other comments? I will call on observer organizations for any comments on document 6. All right, thank you. The Standing Committee notes the reports and the comments made on the floor. Next is agenda item number 7, standard disclosure form for members of the Animals and Plants Committee, document number 7. I give the floor to the Secretary to introduce the document.
Merci, Madame.
Thank you, Madam Chair. At SC 75, the Standing Committee agreed to ask Animals and Plants Committee members to use the CITES standard disclosure form that is in the annex to the current document 7. During debates at SC 75, Israel proposed adding a question 2 to the question on for commercial purposes. So the question would now be, do you have or have you had during the past 4 years an employment or other professional relationship with any company, organization, or institution directly involved in the commercial harvesting, breeding, propagation, domestic or international trade of specimens of CITES listed species or directly representing the interests of such an entity? The Standing Committee agreed to consider Israel's proposal at SC 77, thus at this meeting. The Standing Committee is invited to concern the amendment proposed to the standard disclosure form as we have in paragraph 3 of the document. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you, Secretariat. I'll first open the floor for comments to members of the Standing Committee. Okay, so we have the United Kingdom. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. And as this is the first time I've taken the floor, I'd like to congratulate you on your chairmanship and express our appreciation for taking over under these circumstances. I think we're going to amend chairmanship to chair in future, and we'll come to that shortly. And we'd like to wish Rosemary a speedy recovery. I'd like also to thank the Secretariat for the preparations for this meeting and agree with the comments already made about the ever-increasing workload of the Secretariat and of the CITES committees, and also thank the Government of Switzerland for hosting this meeting. In relation to this document, we are slightly confused about the purpose and objectives and rationale of the amendment proposed. In our view, paragraphs 8A and C of Resolution Conf 18.2 on establishment of committees requires that a candidate should disclose any current financial interests that might call into question his or her impartiality, objectivity, or independence in carrying out his or her duties as a member or alternate member of the committee. In our view, such a financial interest could be in relation to a company or organisation that is engaged in non-commercial harvesting, breeding, propagation, domestic or international trade of specimens of CITES listed species. We therefore not agree that the standard disclosure form for CITES declarations of interest should limit consideration to only commercial aspects of those activities. In our view, we think it's more transparent to consider all possible conflicts of interest rather than narrowing consideration with this amendment. We think that the current drafting allows candidates to declare everything that they think is relevant in these cases. Thank you.
Thank you, the United Kingdom. Next, I give the floor to the United States.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm speaking on behalf of the North America region. The North America region thanks the chair of the Standing Committee for this document, and we understand the question is from Israel to add the word commercial to the standard disclosure form on question number 2. To comment on that, the North America region can agree to this change in wording if we could amend the first question to make it clear that there's a distinction between the two questions. And so we would propose a wording change to question 1, where it says, do you or an immediate family member have, we would like to add, or have you or an immediate family member had during the past 4 years? And if we can add that, then we would agree to adding the word commercial to question number 2. Thank you.
Thank you, United States. I give the floor to Belgium.
Thank you. We align with the point of view mentioned by the UK. Conflict of interest can have different forms and it's not restricted to relation with a commercial operation. Other potential conflicts of interest should be made transparent as well. Therefore, we're not agree with adding commercial before harvesting. Thank you.
Thank you, Belgium. I next give the floor to Georgia.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. First of all, I would like to join my colleagues and thank the Secretariat and thank you for taking this position in such a short notice, as well as Animals and Plants Committee chairs. Concerning this agenda item, I would also share the view of the United Kingdom. It is not very clear for us what the commercial would mean in this case, and we consider that even the research institutions could be linked to further commercial purposes. Therefore, we would not agree with this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Georgia. I next open the floor to observer parties for comments on document number 7. I give the floor to Zimbabwe.
Okay, thank you, Chair. As you are taking the floor for the first time, we wish to congratulate you, Chair, for your appointment as Chair at short notice, and we also wish Rosemary a quick recovery. And we'd also like to thank the Secretariat for the excellent organization of the meeting, as well as thanking the government of Switzerland for hosting us. Madam Chair, we believe that adding the term commercial before the word harvesting adds no value to the statement. Issues of trade are covered further down in the statement, hence there's no need to add the term commercial when trade interests are covered. When the statement addresses domestic or international trade, that sufficiently addresses commercial interests. Therefore, the statement as it is, we agree about it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Zimbabwe. I give the floor to India.
Thank you, Madam Chair. India appreciates the sentiments behind Israel's proposal to insert the word commercial before the word harvesting. However, we do not agree with the proposal. We believe that the standard disclosure form facilitates a candidate to disclose any current financial interest that might call into question his or her impartiality, objectivity, or independence in carrying out his or her duties as a member or alternate member of the committee. This financial interest of candidate may not necessarily be in an entity engaged in commercial harvesting, breeding, propagation, etc. A candidate's engagement with a non-commercial entity might also call into question his or her impartiality, objectivity, or independence. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, India. I'll now open the floor to observer parties. observer organizations for any comments on document number 7. Suko Esse, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I echo the sentiments of everybody in terms of congratulations and appreciation to all parties involved in organizing this week's session. Thank you. On this subject matter, I think the name of the convention is being lost along the way. We are a trade convention. It has to be heavily weighted with people with commercial interests. This is what this is about, whether it's a country with a commercial interest, whether it is an organization or a business with a commercial interest. This is, after all, an international trade convention. I believe it is relatively provocative to include a term commercial as if zoning in on one particular type of interest in an organization that is about trade in the first instance. It's as if one almost is putting a doubt on the bona fides of somebody who has a commercial interest, which makes no sense in a trade convention. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments on document 7? So what I'm hearing is an overwhelming opposition to the insertion of commercial into the standard disclosure. Question number 2. Okay, so the committee does not agree to the proposed amendments to the standard disclosure form for CITES Declaration of Interest. Thank you. Next is agenda item number 27, establishment of the CITES Global Youth Network. I give the floor to Singapore.
Madam Chair, as this is the first time that Singapore is taking the floor, we would like to thank the Secretariat and the Swiss government for hosting the meeting in the beautiful state of Geneva. We would also like to take the opportunity to congratulate Ms. Naima Aziz for taking the chair and wish Dr. Rosemary Nam a swift recovery. Singapore will introduce document 27, prepared jointly by Singapore and the Secretariat on the establishment of the CITES Global Youth Network. Thank you to the committee for moving the agenda forward to coincide with the announcement in Singapore. At the 17th Conference of the Parties adopted Resolution Conference 17.5 on youth engagement. Several initiatives have been undertaken by CITES Secretariat to engage youths and encourage parties to promote youth participation in wildlife conservation and CITES-related issues. In 2021, Singapore launched the Youth Stewards for Nature program to galvanize youth who are passionate about nature conservation and the environment under the guidance of experienced mentors. Today, over 250 youth stewards have worked on 55 exciting and diverse real-world projects, from raising public awareness of our native wildlife to strengthening our efforts in tackling illegal wildlife trade across the region. In 2022, a team of dynamic youth stewards in Singapore, along with the National Parks Board, organized an online regional youth symposium on World Wildlife Day. It served as a platform for youth in the region to voice their aspirations and discuss how they could contribute and support biodiversity conservation in the region. The symposium was attended by more than 200 participants from Southeast Asia and created meaningful and useful networks for youths to act collectively to drive nature conservation in Southeast Asia. This year, the second run of the youth-led World Wildlife Day Regional Youth Symposium was held in person in Singapore. Ahead of the symposium, Secretary General, during her mission trip to Singapore, witnessed the energy and enthusiasm of the 16 vibrant youths who organized the event. She later graced the event virtually through her online address And this 2023 edition brought together over 170 youths from 15 countries to discuss wildlife conservation and trade issues through a series of talks, panel discussions, and workshops. Following the success of this event and acknowledging the importance of youth as future decision makers, Singapore, together with the CITES Secretariat, proposed to kickstart the establishment of the CITES Global Youth Network to engage a broader community of youths. This initiative seeks to build a platform for youths to be equipped with the capacity to objectively understand and manage the intricacies of sustainable wildlife trade. 2 Singaporean youth stewards have volunteered to step forward as co-founders of the Global Youth Network, one of whom is here with us today. To organize this effort, Singapore will take the lead to host a CITES Youth Leadership Program in 2024. Singapore would like to update paragraph 11C in the document that the event will be held in the first half of the 2024 instead of March. Youth representatives from different geographic regions will be invited to Singapore to be part of the founding members of the CITES Global Youth Network. As founding members, they will lead in creating the network's vision, mission, and terms of reference. These youths will also organize an inaugural Global Youth Summit in 2025 in Singapore. Singapore will facilitate the youth consultation with the Secretariat on the lineup of events and activities and the resourcing required to organize the CITES Youth Leadership Program and Global Youth Summits. Singapore invites interested parties to join in this effort to nurture the future leaders of tomorrow by nominating youths to attend the CITES Youth Leadership Program in 2024. Singapore plans to report the outcomes of the CITES Youth Leadership Program to the Standing Committee at its 78th meeting. The Standing Committee is invited to support Singapore's efforts in establishing the CITES Global Youth Network and requests for the Secretariat to support Singapore in this initiative. The Standing Committee is also invited to encourage parties and observers to join in this initiative and to nominate youths for the CITES Youth Leadership Program in 2024. I now invite one of the young co-founders from Singapore to say a few words.
Press again.
Madam Chair, as a 23-year-old who is passionate for species conservation, I envision a future where stakeholders, including governments, businesses, and local communities, work together in harmony with nature for the betterment of people and wildlife. With the establishment of the CITES Global Youth Network and through the Global Youth Summits, I am hopeful that my peers and I will not only understand CITES better, but also build the friendships and partnerships that are necessary to help us work together and realize this future of sustainable development and conservation. I humbly seek the support of the Standing Committee, observer parties, and organizations to nominate affiliated youths for the CITES Youth Leadership Program in 2024 and to help grow the network so that we youths can be equipped to grow the network and contribute to effective and just conservation actions and decisions when we step into your shoes in time to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Singapore. I'll now open the floor for comments from the Standing Committee on document number 27. I give the floor to Indonesia.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for giving us the floor. Indonesia highly appreciates and extends its support to Singapore for her effort in establishing the CITES Global Youth Network. We also invite to the other parties to carry out the same activities as Singapore in inviting the youth generation in order to ensure the sustainability use of wildlife. We support this initiative considering the targets of the CBD Kunming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, in particular to achieve target 22 on participant in decision making, including youth. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Indonesia. I next give the floor to Belgium.
Thank you. We congratulate Singapore for the efforts made to engage youth in CITES. We stress the importance of ensuring that young people understand and contribute to work under CITES to ensure its long-lasting impacts over generation. So we agree with your recommendations.
Thank you, Belgium. Next, I give the floor to Kenya.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson, taking the floor for the first time. We wish to congratulate you and wish Rosemary quick recovery, and to thank the Secretariat for the organization of this SC 677 and the government of Switzerland for hosting us. Chair, I think Kenya will want to encourage Singapore and support having the youth network under CITES. And I think we can borrow leave from the Ramsar Convention. The UNESCO, they already have youth networks and CBD. And I think it's a good thing because youth is the future. As a country, we involve youth in many of our programs, in advocacy more so, to bring the issues of sustainable use, and youth involvement is key. And we look forward to sending our youth groups to Singapore in the mid of 2024. Thank you.
Thank you, Kenya. I next give the floor to Kuwait.
Thank you, Chair. Kuwait would like to congratulate Singapore on their great efforts on the CITES Global Youth Network and would like to support the initiative. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Kuwait. I next give the floor to Morocco.
Merci, Madame la
Thank you, Madam. As this is the first time Morocco has taken the floor, we would like to congratulate you on your chairing this meeting. We would also like to thank the Secretariat for all of the preparatory work done for this significant meeting. On this document, 27, on the establishment of the CITES Global Youth Network, we would like to express our support for Singapore and hope that Secretariat will become involved in this work alongside other international conventions. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you, Morocco. I'll now give the floor to Switzerland.
Thank you, Chair. I would just like to add the voice of Switzerland to previous speakers. I think it's a very commendable initiative that Singapore has been taking, and we are fully supportive of the recommendations in document 27. Thank you.
Thank you, Switzerland. I next give the floor to the United Kingdom.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We'd just like to add our voice to those that have already been made and support the involvement of all CITES, of all in CITES, and we've long recognised the need to ensure the engagement of youth in our important work. We welcome this initiative to kickstart the establishment of CITES Global Youth Network and urge all parties to join Singapore's effort in this regard. Thank you.
Thank you, the United Kingdom. I will next give the floor to the Dominican Republic.
Thank you, Madam. This is the first time we have taken the floor. We would like to, on behalf of our region, say that we are 100% behind this proposal. We do think that this is a good initiative, and other MEs have taken similar initiatives. We do think this is a very good way to generate support for the convention. We would like to thank Singapore for having made the proposal and we entirely agree with the idea that young people should be encouraged to become involved in conservation. That is the way of the future. Thank you.
Thank you, the Dominican Republic. Next, I give the floor to Brazil.
Gracias, señora presidenta.
Thank you, Madam. I would like to wish Rosemary Nyam a full and prompt recovery, and also say, Madam, that I'm sure that under your leadership we are going to have an excellent week's work. We would also like to extend thanks to the government of Switzerland for their generous hospitality. We would like to congratulate the CITES Secretariat and the chairs of the committees for all of the hard work done since the COP. With respect to the document on youth, we would like to join others who have spoken out in support of this initiative taken by Singapore. We would like to thank Singapore for having done so. And we would like to say that for Brazil and for our region, we feel it's very important that young people become involved in the convention and species conservation. This is decisive because we need to ensure that we stimulate leadership among youth so that our work is taken up in the future. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you, Brazil. I now open the floor to observer parties. I first give the floor to Zambia. Thank you, Madam Chair. And first and foremost, since the first time we're taking the floor as Zambia, would like to congratulate you for the position that you've taken for this meeting. And further, would like to thank you, the organizing committee, for organizing such a meeting. As regards the document before us or under consideration, as Zambia would want to appreciate the contents of the document, and we thank you indeed, Singapore, for the proposal, the recommendations they've made in this meeting. And indeed, we support the recommendation, recognizing that the youths are critical when it comes to implementation of issues to do with wildlife. And we do appreciate indeed what Singapore is doing, and we encourage other parties to actually imitate what Singapore is doing and follow suit. We thank you so much, and we support the recommendation. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Zambia. I now give the floor to the United Arab Emirates.
Thank you, Chair. We would like to express to our gratitude to the Singapore and the Secretariat for preparing this document. We commend Singapore for the effort in furthering this objective with the establishment of the CITES Global Youth Network. We believe that the youth beginning federation mark we play a key role in sustainable wildlife trade. Hence, the United Arab Emirates keen in exploring appropriately to participate in the CGUIN. We will also encourage few member nations to endorse this initiative and magnify this impact. Together, let's to empower our youth to chairman conservation efforts for the sensibility future. Thank you. We supported also the document, and thank you.
Thank you, the UAE. I now give the floor to the United States.
Thank you, Chair. Also, we would like to add our congratulations to others for your nomination, for your selection as the chair of the committee. We're looking forward to a lively week. We wanted to join the other voices in commending Singapore for its demonstrated leadership in engaging youth in CITES. Although there are no direct budget implications identified in the document, we would want to make sure to take those into consideration before making any firm commitments. If Singapore proceeds as outlined in the document, the United States would want to ensure youths joining the network are selected from different parts of the world, ensuring a diverse representation of participants. We recognize the need to educate, inspire, and empower the next generation of leaders in wildlife conservation and CITES implementation. Today's youth are experiencing new challenges, but also new technology that may provide valuable, innovative tools to ensure wildlife trade remains legal, traceable, and biologically sustainable. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, United States. Next, I give the floor to Senegal.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. First of all, Senegal is most sorry for what happened to Ms. Rosemary, and we wish her a rapid recovery. And we'd like to thank you also for your work as chair. Now, in terms of this workshop, we consider it's very important. Now, the document before us on youth participation through a global CITES youth network, we consider that it is an extremely good opportunity and a good idea that was put before us by Singapore. We think we should go beyond that and invite the Secretariat to issue a notification which would invite parties at country level to set up groups that can join this global network. And we'd like to congratulate Singapore once more on this very good initiative, which links youth to wildlife conservation, and we need to start now to ensure that they are in a position to work with endangered species. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senegal. Next, I will give the floor to India.
Thank you, Madam Chair. At the outset, India would like to commend Singapore for its efforts in establishing the CITES Global Youth Network. National Green Corps program was implemented by the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, Government of India, under the Central Sector Scheme, Environment Education, Awareness and Training since the year 2001-2 until 2021-22. Under this program, more than 100,000 eco-clubs have been formed in schools and colleges to educate students and to spread awareness on environmental issues. The said scheme has been revamped during the year 2021-22-23 into Environment Education Program. This program leverages on the key sectoral strength of eco-clubs already formed under NGC program. In addition to targeting youth clubs and other such clubs, units, groups formed under various programs, schemes of the government. The objective of this program is to sensitize children, youth on issues related to environment and to motivate them to adopt sustainable lifestyle through varied pedagogical initiatives like workshops, projects, exhibitions, campaigns, competitions, nature camps, summer vacation programs, etc. India would like to know more about CITES Global Youth Network and join Singapore's efforts in the establishment of CGYN. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, India. Next, I give the floor to Thailand.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is the first time for Thailand to taking the floor, so we would like to congratulate the Secretariat to organize these important meetings. Thailand also would like to support Singapore to initiate this very helpful in the network. As a part of ASEAN, we also very keen to join this network. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Thailand. Next, I give the floor to China.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is the first time that China takes the floor. I would like to congratulate you for charging the chair at such a short notice. I would also like to extend my gratitude to the Secretariat for their diligent work in organizing this meeting. We will select and encourage outstanding young officials and experts in this field in China to actively participate in relevant activities. And also, we will play the role of a major country and provide support for personnel and the related activities. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, China. Next, I give the floor to Zimbabwe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Zimbabwe is willing to join hands with Singapore in engaging and including the youth in both wildlife conservation and CITES issues. But in addition, we would like to CITES to look at the possibility of developing a database of best practice cases of youth engagement initiatives accessible to parties to enable sharing of experiences. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Zimbabwe. Next, I give the floor to Malaysia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As this is the first time Malaysia is taking the floor, we would like to congratulate the Secretariat for the arrangement of the meeting and to Madam Chair for your appointment as the Chair of the Standing Committee. Malaysia also supports the initiative to establish CITES Global Youth Network. Malaysia has partnered with Singapore in several youth engagements, and we see a lot of potential. Youth can contribute to sustainable trade and conservation of endangered species. We are therefore looking forward to join Singapore's effort in the establishment of the CGYN. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Malaysia. Next, I give the floor to Bahrain.
Thank you, Chair. The Kingdom of Bahrain would first like to thank both the Secretariat and host country for preparing for this important meeting. The Kingdom of Bahrain would also like to acknowledge and extend appreciation to Singapore for this initiative, especially for the Kingdom of Bahrain, where a big part of the CITES team are under 30 years old and are youth. This initiative highlights the importance of youth inclusion in promoting sustainable wildlife trade and is in line with the GBF, the post-2020 GBF, of including youth in conservation matters. And so we commend and support Singapore for this initiative.
Thank you, Bahrain. I will give the floor next to Honduras.
Queremos agradecer.
We'd like to thank the country for assisting us and the Secretariat and for you for taking up this role. And we are very much in agreement with joining the efforts that have been started by Singapore in the Central American region. As the United States said, we would be interested in participating and encouraging youth to be able to take up this work. We'd also like to thank all of our colleagues from the Caribbean region as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Honduras. Next, I give the floor to Peru.
Gracias.
Thank you and good morning. As it's the first time Peru is speaking, we would like to thank the Secretariat for all the work in organizing the meeting and the Swiss Confederation for hosting us, and we'd like to congratulate you on taking up this role. We think it's relevant that we promote on knowledge of CITES to youth populations, and we'd like to congratulate Singapore on the impressive work they've been doing on involving youth. We think it's very important that we build on training on CITES and its relevance to wildlife. Thank you.
Thank you, Peru. I give the floor to Oman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As Oman delegation, this is the first time to take the floor. We congratulate you for chairing this committee, and we extend our thanks to CITES Secretariat for organizing this meeting, and also for the Swiss government for hosting us. Oman welcome these documents, and we support Singapore for the youth network. Thank you.
Thank you, Oman. I will give the floor to the Democratic Republic of Congo, the DRC.
President.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to join all those who have spoken before me. And the Democratic Republic of Congo is very keen to work with this initiative proposed by Singapore. We have a large youth program that the President of the Republic initiated, where we have school diaries and curriculum and many projects that would be of interest. So we'd like to join Singapore. Thank you.
Thank you to the DRC. Next, I open the floor to observer organizations. I give the floor to the Sustainable Youth Coalition, South Africa.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I also congratulate Singapore and all the other parties that have spoken in support of this great initiative. What I'm about to say here, I hope is taken up as a tangible move to give some extra or added impetus to this initiative. We hope, as the Sustainable Youth Coalition of Southern Africa, in engagement with the responsible person from the CITES Secretariat, to offer as an ongoing project that members of the CITES Youth Committee in future, in manageable groups, come and visit our region, hosted by us fully. All in-country costs will be covered, accommodation, food, travel, in-country travel, to go and showcase the entire public and private wildlife and floral businesses and sector in South Africa, in Southern Africa, showing the communal responsibility work done there, from the value add functions that are done, the employment opportunities of the sustainable use in action. We believe that as much as conventions will teach the youth a lot about the technical side of things, the best classroom remains the actual place where wildlife and our floral kingdom flourish. And we will host that on an ongoing basis in cooperation and with a curricula worked out with the CITES Secretariat in future, if they will have that and engage us on that. We would also like to see some of the wealthier parties here consider and looking at your own perhaps potential to assist in coming with the other leg of the cost involved in that, which would be the international travel element of it. That would be one of the bigger constraints that would have to be outsourced somewhere. But certainly all in-country costs in the Southern African region that we put together for this curricula, the Sustainable Youth Coalition of Southern Africa will cover. Thank you.
Thank you. I now give the floor to UNEP.
Thank you, Madam Chair. UNEP thanks you for the opportunity to present its work in support of youth engagement in general related to MEAs. Before doing that, I would like to, of course, congratulate you, Madam Chair, for your position in this meeting, and give our sincere thanks to the government of Switzerland for the great hospitality, as well as our colleagues in the Secretariat for the organization of the meeting. UNEP has developed a youth development strategy in support of MEAs globally. This program aims to increase youth engagement and empower youth by long-term mentoring and capacity building in general, especially through the Youth Empowerment Training Initiative, which we call YETI. A number of activities on strengthening youth voices in future environmental governance issues are provided and giving opportunities to influencers in general to make sure that change is given and that youth is empowered. We did that to respond to the needs and interests of youth that came from different regions, and the YETI's activities are flexible, transformative, and responding to opportunities that are put forward by the youth. In 2021, we trained 32 youth on issues of conservation and development and tried to capacitate them to provide inputs to the GBF as well through the Biodiversity Youth Network as well and the CBD. In 2022, we empowered 16 selected youth to become youth leaders capable to train, support, and empower other young people and provide inputs on pro-environmental behavior, management, and governance. UNEP also developed a toolkit on pro-environmental youth engagement, which we are ready to speak about a little bit more at this meeting. And last, we'd like to, of course, congratulate Singapore for these great initiatives, which we fully support. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, UNEP. Next, I give the floor to IWMC.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Since it's the first time we take the floor, we'd like to congratulate you on the chairwomanship and thank the Swiss government for the organization of this meeting. IWMC World Conservation Trust is very much in favor of this initiative, as the engagement of youth is crucial to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, as well as to achieve effective biodiversity conservation in the future. Unfortunately, I know this from personal experience, it is sometimes difficult to motivate youth to engage actively in matters related to environmental protection, especially on a communal level. So every initiative that moves youth engagement forward is much appreciated. Therefore, we thank Singapore for our efforts for the establishment of a youth network, which after 50 years, 2 generations of CITES, was long overdue. After all, youth are the decision makers of the future, and also this convention lies in their hands, making one of the Rio principles, namely intergenerational equity, even more tangible within the CITES context. We would also like to point to the fact that, however, it is especially indigenous youth who play a crucial role for indigenous peoples. Therefore, we hope that in future, and once the network is well established, special regard is paid to the needs, perspectives, and concerns of indigenous youth within CITES. Thank you.
Thank you, IWMC. Any other comments on the document? Okay, so I turn to the Standing Committee. To note the comments made, the recommendations in the recommendations in the document, and the comments we heard on the floor, specifically the idea of a notification, as well as the invitation from the Sustainable Youth Coalition South Africa. Does the committee agree to that? Oh, and then also the initial edit from Singapore in recommendation C to change the wording from the 1st March 2024 to the first half of 2024, so that it reads, encourage parties and observers to nominate youth affiliated with their organizations to attend the CITES Youth Leadership Program in the first half of 2024 and the Global Youth Summit from 2025 onwards. Okay. The committee notes the document and the comments made on the floor, and the edits, and agrees to the recommendations. Okay, next on the agenda is item 8, financial matters. I give the floor to the Secretariat.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning to everybody. The document 8 on financial matters provides information on income and expenditures for the period 1st of January 2022 to 30 of September 2023 for respective trust fund of the Convention. The financial data for 2022 shows an implementation rate of 98% for the core trust fund. As of 30 of September, the overall expenditure rate had reached a rate of 78%. A matter of concern for the Secretariat is the delay by parties in paying their annual contributions. As of end of 30 of September, the overall collection rate for the first 9 months of this year was 60% and included full or partial contribution of $3.5 million received from 77 parties out of 184. We are reminding parties of the Financial Resolution 19.1 especially paragraphs 23 and 24, that expects parties to pay their contribution to the trust fund in timely manner and as far as possible during the year prior to the one that contribution applies, or promptly by the beginning of the calendar year. It should be noted that the issue on unpaid contribution will have a negative impact on the Secretariat's ability to fund daily operations, as the cash balance available is very low compared to the actual expenditures projected for the year. As of end of 30 September, the cash balance for the Secretariat was negative at $1.6 million. The Secretariat is proposing that the current levels of the registration fees for observer organizations remains in place, and that no fees will be charged for online meetings. Further review of this document and its recommendations will be dealt with within the Finance and Budget Subcommittee, who will have his first meeting today at 12:15 in room 12 on the second floor. Madam Chair, this will end my briefing on this agenda item. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretariat. I will now open the floor for comments. First, to the members of the Standing Committee. Opening the floor to observer parties to comment on this document, number 8. And to observer organizations. Okay. The committee notes document 77, doc 8, and thank you. And this document will be further discussed in the Finance and Budget Subcommittee. Next, agenda item number 9, terms of reference of the Finance and Budget Subcommittee, document SC 77, document 9. I give the floor again to the Secretariat.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In decision 18.2, requests the Standing Committee to consider whether the terms of reference of the Subcommittee on Finance and Budget of the Standing Committee should be annexed to Resolution Conf 18 on the establishment of committees. The Secretariat notes that the inclusion of the terms of reference of the Subcommittee helps to differentiate the Subcommittee from the intersessional working groups established after each COP. The only drawback is that only the COP will be able to revise the mandate. However, the Secretariat notes that the mandate has remained largely unchanged since its creation in 2008. The Standing Committee is therefore invited to make the following proposals to the Conference of the Parties. A. The terms of reference of the Subcommittee on Finance and Budget of the Standing Committee as amended by the Secretariat in annex to this document 77, and to refer in the text of the resolution, we propose an amendment to paragraph 2 of the resolution, which would read, directs the Standing Committee to establish a subcommittee on finance and budget. That's an existing text. And then we would add, in accordance with the terms of reference found in Annex 3 of this resolution. And the amendment proposed by the Secretariat is simply to change chairman and replace it with chair. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Secretariat. I now open the floor for comments to the Standing Committee. Next, to observer parties. I give the floor to India.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Standing Committee was established by a resolution of the second meeting of the Conference of Parties, Conf 2.2. The Animals and Plants Committees were established at the 6th meeting of the Conference of the Parties. And at its 57th meeting, the Standing Committee established the Finance and Budget Subcommittees. This is the sequence in which these committees were established. We believe that the reference to the establishment of these committees and the subcommittee and the annexes in which their terms of references appear in the resolution Conf 18.2 should also follow the same sequence. With the amendment proposed in the document, the reference to the Annex 3 would appear in paragraph 2 of the resolution, that is before the reference to Annex 2 in paragraph 3. We therefore suggest that the Standing Committee proposes to the Conference of the Parties that in the resolution Conf 18.2, paragraph 2 be replaced with paragraph 3 of the present resolution, and the present para 2 with the proposed amendment is inserted as para 3 of the resolution Conf 18.2. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, India. Any other comments from observer parties? Next, observer organizations. Any comments? Okay, I'm turning to the Standing Committee to get your comments on the proposal from India. Any clarification on the proposal needed? So the Standing Committee agrees. Oh, we have a comment from Brazil. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Brazil understands the rationale behind in this proposal. However, we find hard to react at this point of this meeting to the consequence, the possible consequence of changing the order of paragraphs here. And I'm thinking particularly about possible consequence to any reference that other decisions and resolutions of this convention that might refer to this resolution Conf 18.2, and that might refer to their this resolution current ordering that, for instance, that refers to the Standing Committee to establish a Finance and Budget Subcommittee on paragraph 2. So to clarify our position, we are not against. We are just confused and would need a clarification on the possible consequences of changing the order of paragraphs here. Thank you.
Thank you, Brazil. I give the floor to Switzerland.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to echo what Brazil just said. We have heard now on the floor reshuffling of paragraphs in this resolution, and as long as we don't really grab what that entails, what consequences it could have, I think it's difficult to agree on such a reshuffling here on the floor now. So I don't. As Brazil, we are not fundamentally against that, but we just would like to understand what the consequences could be. Thank you.
I give the floor to the United States.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Speaking for the North America region, we would recommend sending the discussion to the Finance and Budget Subcommittee because this is a bit difficult to track, and so that might be a fruitful discussion. Thank you.
Next, I give the floor to Kenya.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just like Brazil and the previous speaker, Kenya would consider that it may not be, not that we are against the proposition by India, but we consider that this resolution establishes a number of committees or the committees under this resolution, and amending paragraph 3 of the resolution without having a deeper discussion on what the consequences would be, it means we may need to have time, and because Kenya is a representative for Africa in the Finance and Budget Subcommittee, we'd suggest that the Finance and Budget Subcommittee further discusses what would be the consequences of the amendments as proposed by India. And if there are no consequences, then it can be considered. If there are consequences, then a deeper discussion needs to follow. But we would recommend that the recommendations made on the entrenching the terms of reference of this subcommittee into resolution 18.2 is perfect. And the amendment on the changing to use a neutral gender of changing chairman to chair acceptable to us, and we believe we are also speaking on behalf of Africa as we are their representatives in that subcommittee. Thank you.
Thank you, Kenya. I next give the floor to Japan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We associate ourselves to the comments made by Brazil, because we are supposed to change just one word from chairman to chair, so that's very simple solution. And we need to see the consequences of changing other parts. We are a bit reluctant to go further with these possible amendments at this stage. Thank you very much.
So I am hearing a lot of support for the recommendations A in the document, and possible concern over the proposal made by India. And so I'm going to refer this matter to the Budget and Finance and Budget Subcommittee for further exploration of the consequences or of renumbering and shuffling around the order in the resolution. But if the committee is supportive, we could agree at least on recommendation A. All right, super, thank you. And so the remainder of the recommendation, as well as a readout from the Finance and Budget Subcommittee, will come back later on in the meeting. Next is agenda item 10, administrative matters. Document 10.1, report of the Secretariat. I give the floor to the Secretariat.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The document 10.1 contains the report of the Secretariat on the administrative matters. During the period since COP19 in November 2022 and until today, the Secretariat has finalized 4 recruitment cases for staff funded from the core and external trust funds and 6 separation cases. Currently, the Secretariat is working on 10 ongoing recruitment cases, which are expected to be finalized end of this year and beginning of 2024. The Secretariat wants to flag for UNEP's Junior Professional Officer program, in which governments can sponsor positions encumbered by its national staff for up to 2 years. The Secretariat has submitted 5 proposals for JPOs to UNEP, and they relate to enforcement, compliance, project management, and communication areas. And as of today, none of them has been sponsored. The Secretariat expresses its deep gratitude to parties for their contributions to the core trust fund, and also to those donors that have enabled the Secretariat to employ additional staff resources through the external trust fund. The Secretariat continues to work with UNEP and its dedicated MAA unit on administrative, financial, human resources, and legal matters on those cases that are processed through the UNEP's Corporate Service Division. The audit by the Office of the Internal Oversight Service in 2021 made 9 recommendations to address issues identified during the audit. 5 of those recommendations have been completed. Those that are still outstanding requires additional resources, and the Secretariat is continuing its efforts to fundraise, but also to establish internal monitoring processes and procedures to ensure full compliance with the recommendation. The Secretariat is happy to report that a new contribution agreement has been signed with the government of Switzerland for funding of implementation of activities from the program of work. The agreement includes an annual contribution of 1 million Swiss francs per year, and or a total of 4 million for the period 2023 to 2026. Further review of this document and its recommendation will be dealt with in the Finance and Budget Subcommittee, who will meet during the full week, during the lunchtime during the full week. Madam Chair, this is ending my briefing. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretariat. I open the floor for comments from the Standing Committee. Observer parties, observer organizations. Okay, the Standing Committee notes document 77, SC 77, document 10.1 on administrative matters. Next is agenda item 10.2, SC 77 Doc 10.3. Is that correct? SC 77 Doc 10.2, report of the United Nations Environment Program on administrative matters. I give the floor to UNEP.
Good morning, Chair. UNEP thanks you for the opportunity to present its work on administrative matters in support of the Convention, as set out in the report of the Executive Director to this meeting, SC 77 Doc 10.2. The report includes new sections relating to policy guidelines and procedures, legal advice, supply chain management oversight, in addition to the traditional areas on human resources, budget and finance, and support to the multilateral environmental agreements in general. Some important updates since the last COP include on the policy guidelines and procedures side. I'm pleased to inform that effective 11 October 2022, UNEP adopted an updated policy on the use of UNEP's name and emblem. The policy states that the multilateral environmental agreements can, of course, develop their own logos and branding strategies. On the human resources side, UNEP has in this report informed about the so-called after-service health insurance program. In short, the ASHI program, which is a benefit provided to retired staff members of the UN that enables continued access to the same health services insurance schemes available to active staff after retirement. In this regard, in the last quarter of 2022, the UN controller approved an increase in the ASHI rate. Now, all UNEP staff budgets, including those from the secretaries of the multilateral environmental agreements, should reflect an increased cost associated with this ASHI program. Third, on the program support cost, in June 2022, the UN controller noted that decreasing program support cost resources could not sustain demands unless the established program support cost rate of 13% charge against voluntary contributions is applied consistently to all donors. The UN controller informed that waivers or reduction of the program support cost rate is strongly discouraged, as this could lead to inability to meet administrative costs associated with the program implementation. Fourth, on the oversight side, my colleagues from the Secretariat have already reported on the status of the audit being carried out on CITES, and it's indeed for the outstanding recommendations that are being handled jointly between UNEP and the Secretariat. Finally, Chair, the Executive Director of UNEP wishes to assure the Standing Committee that through its Division of Corporate Services Division, the CITES Secretariat has an appropriate and effective avenue for having their perspectives and needs included in policy decisions in a manner which allows the Secretariat to maintain its focus on the program of work approved by the Conference of the Parties. I thank you.
Thank you, UNEP. I will now open the floor for discussions on the document to the members of the Standing Committee. Observer parties? Observer organizations? I give the floor to Canada.
Thank you, Chair. And before Canada intervenes, as this is our first time taking the floor, I do want to thank you, Chair, for taking on this role and to wish Rose a speedy recovery. Just a quick note. First of all, we just want to underscore the importance that Canada places on the MOU of cooperation between the Standing Committee and UNEP, and trust that its direction is being met when decisions are being taken. And then regarding the report that we just heard and read, there is a recommendation there on the use of the program support costs for administrative staff. And we appreciate that recommendation. We think it would be important when this is being taken into consideration that there is some assurances that if there is a switch from using program support staff costs for that purpose, that that will not affect the percentage of the allocation of those program support costs for the benefit of the convention. So we're just going to underline that point. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Canada. Any additional comments? So the committee notes the document SC 77 10.2 and the comments made by Canada. Next is agenda item 13, Access to Funding, SC 77, Doc 13, Rev 1. I give the floor to the Secretariat.
Thank you, Chair. The present document, SC 77, Doc 13, Rev 1, has been submitted by the Secretariat and provides an update on the implementation of decisions 18.4 as well as 19.4 through 19.9, including on the provision of professional personnel through the CINE program of the City of Lausanne of Switzerland, the regular issuance of notifications to the parties on status of funding for the implementation of valid decisions after COP19, and the Secretariat's continued involvement as a member of the Program Steering Committee of the GEF Global Wildlife Program with the aim to align GEF-funded projects under the GEF 8 Wildlife Conservation for Development Integrated Program with the CITES objectives. The Secretariat would like to use this opportunity to thank the following parties that have made extra budgetary support to the implementation of the Convention to date: China, the European Union, Germany, Hong Kong SAR, Japan, Monaco, the Netherlands, Sweden, Switzerland, the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and the United States of America. In addition, the Secretariat would also like to thank the Animal Welfare Institute, the Safari Club Foundation, and the World Conservation Society, which have also provided financial support to the Secretariat for the implementation of selected decisions. Regarding the issuance of notification to parties on the status of funding, a new notification to parties number 2023/122 of 23rd October 2023 has been issued to update you on the existing funding gaps that remain. In implementation of Decision 19.6, the European Union and the United States of America have allowed for staff costs to be included in their project budgets in recognition of the need for project management support as the portfolio of activities implemented by the Secretariat are increasing over time. The Secretariat is particularly grateful for their support in this regard. On this opportunity, the Secretariat would also like to introduce Ms. Siri Makele, who has joined the CITES Secretariat this week as Associate Program Officer and whose post is made possible through the project support budget provided by the United States of America. She will join Ms. Panida Charatok, Project Assistant, in providing dedicated project management support to a number of extra budgetary projects that are managed by the CITES Secretariat. So we would like to welcome Siri for joining the CITES family. The Standing Committee is invited to take note of document SC 77, Doc 13, Rev 1. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Secretariat. I will open the floor for comments on document 13, Rev 1, first to members of the Standing Committee. I give the floor to Georgia.
Thank you very much. This is just more a comment concerning the decision 19.4. Even though it's not mentioned in this decision, and it only refers to GEF 8, after the adoption of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, under the GEF new trust fund for implementation of the GBF has also been established, which will support implementation of the GBF and as well as the national biodiversity strategies and action plans. And since the CITES is related primarily to the target 5 of the GBF, but also to several other targets. It is particularly important for the countries to include all the CITES-related activities they require into the MBSEPs to further be eligible for support under that framework, under that trust fund, as well as other funding availabilities. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Georgia. Any comments from observer parties? I give the floor to Mexico.
Gracias.
Thank you, Madam. We would like to thank the Secretariat for this report on these decisions, particularly with respect to GEF. We also would like to recognize the extra budgetary voluntary support provided by countries and donor countries, which comes to over $4 million, providing for effective support to CITES decisions. We would, however, like to urge developed countries to increase their support, if possible, to cover more than 90% of those projects which are still unfunded, as we have in the notification of March of this year. We would like to suggest that they show more flexibility with respect to resource allocation and to have consultations with the CITES Secretariat with respect to the prioritization of these projects when they are presented to parties. With respect to Totoaba, there is a difficulty with respect to illegal trade, and this is a matter that it relates to international organized crime, which is related to 19.5 and 19.8. We would like the Secretariat to provide us information with respect to the funding available for the implementation of the study that we have in 1829-4, which is also aimed at cooperation between countries of transit and of the country, of the species involved. Thank you.
Next, I'll take comments from Indonesia. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for giving Indonesia the floor. We appreciate the Secretariat for preparing the report and for the arrangement of accessibility of funding through the GEF for facilities related to biodiversity conservation, which ensures traceability, legality, and sustainability of wildlife use trade. In addition, as Georgia has actually mentioned, Indonesia would like to refer to the results of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework that has established the KM-GBF Fund that has been launched at the GEF Assembly. Hence, in that regard, Indonesia suggests the Secretariat to bring synergy on the resource mobilizations between the CBD and the CITES. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Indonesia. Any additional comments? WCS, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and we would also like to congratulate you and appreciate and offer our fullest support to you in your unexpected chairing of this committee and wish Dr. Nam a speedy and safe recovery from her injury and surgery. We'll be very brief. We'd like to thank Georgia and Indonesia and others for mentioning the CBD Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework and the NBSAPs, and encourage all parties to the CBD, which is all parties to CITES other than one, in their NBSAPs to prioritize the implementation of Target 5, in particular on wildlife use that is sustainable, legal, and without risk of pathogen spillover, to include that and CITES implementation in their NBSAPs, because that will assist with access to resources. We'd also like to correct and thank the Secretariat for acknowledging our contribution that they mentioned, but we are, for the record, we are the Wildlife Conservation Society and not the World Conservation Society. Thank you very much, Chair.
My apologies, WCS. Any other comments? Brazil?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and sorry for my late intervention. I understand that members of the committee have already expressed their views on this document, but I just would like to recall that the GBF Trust Fund has been approved in the council meeting of the GEF that took place in Brasilia in June this year, just to reaffirm our commitment and our refreshed commitment with the biodiversity conservation and sustainable use. And referring to the coming Montreal GBF, I would like to echo what Mexico had just mentioned, and to refer to Target 19, and particularly to the Target 19A that calls for an increasing of total biodiversity-related international financial resources from developed countries to developing countries, in particular list developed countries and small island developing states, as well as countries with economies in transition, to at least 20 billion US dollars per year by 2025, and to at least 30 billion per year by 2030. This is important to keep in mind under the principle of common responsibilities, shared responsibilities, but differentiated responsibilities. That we must never lose sight of the necessity of developed countries financing biodiversity activities, conservation activities in developing countries. Thank you.
Thank you, Brazil. Okay, any additional comments? I'm going to recommend, in regards to the request made by Mexico, that we take that up when we are discussing document 33.13.2. We can revisit it then. And to the committee to note the document SC 77 Doc 13 Rev 1 and the comments that were made on the floor by Brazil, Georgia, Mexico, as well as the Wildlife Conservation Society. Thank you. Agree? Noted. Okay, next up is agenda item 14, Sponsored Delegates Project, SC 77 Doc 14. Again, I will turn to the Secretariat to introduce the document.
Thank you, Chair. The present document, SC 77 Doc 14, has been prepared by the Secretariat. The document is an overview of the Sponsored Delegates Project process and demonstrate the length and complexity of the steps involved, as it is an exercise that consists of fundraising and travel arrangements which take place at the same time. Considering that it takes about 15 months from start to finish, it would seem impossible to expand the SDP to the meetings of the animals, plants, and standing committees in the same scale as that of the COP, unless fundamental changes are made in the budgeting and staffing of the Secretariat to specifically serve for the sponsored delegates project. With regard to the present meeting, the Secretariat issued notification to parties 2023/053 on 25th of April 2023 to invite governments and others to provide financial support for the 12 developing country parties subject to Article 13 process to attend. While no offers for financial support was made in response to the notification, the Secretariat was able to use available funds to support the participation costs of 3 delegates from developing country parties subject to Article 13 processes. The Standing Committee is invited to recommend that the expansion of the Sponsored Delegates Project be limited to the Standing Committee for the reasons I mentioned before, and only to support the participation of developing country parties subject to an Article 13 process. The Standing Committee is also invited to encourage parties to make their financial contributions early and with flexibility regarding the use, such as the removal of geographical earmarking, exempting from individualized financial reporting requirements, and allowing rollover to other years for future use, so that the Secretariat can continue to support the sponsored delegates in the most effective and efficient manner. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Secretariat. I'll first open the floor to Standing Committee members for comments on the document. I give the floor to Belgium.
Thank you. We thank the Secretariat for preparing the document and express appreciation for the important work. We agree with Secretariat's recommendation A, B, and D, and in particular the expansion of the SDP only in support of the participation of developing countries parties subject to an Article 13 process. On the recommendation C, we suggest adding as far as possible before with flexibility regarding the use. The text would read, encourage parties to make their financial contribution to the sponsored delegate project as early as possible for maximum use and preferably no later than 5 months before the meeting of the COP and as far as possible with flexibility regarding the use. This addition would allow to consider a situation where flexibility is not possible, for instance, under national law. And we also would like to remind parties to ensure they attend the meetings with valid credentials when receiving support and suggest that the Secretariat keeps track of situations where this was not the case. Thank you.
Thank you, Belgium. I now give the floor to New Zealand.
Thank you. Sorry. Tēnā koutou katoa, greetings from the Oceania region. Oceania welcomes the Secretariat's assessment of the Sponsored Delegates Programme. This programme supports a number of Oceania parties to attend the COP, and for this reason it is a very important programme to our region. We thank the Secretariat for implementing the Sponsored Delegates Programme to date and acknowledge the challenges involved in implementing it that are clearly set out in this document. We can see that even without an extension of the Sponsored Delegates Programme to the committees, implementing the programme is challenging and requires significant human resources from the Secretariat that are not currently budgeted for. Further to the improvements suggested by the Secretariat in paragraph 22 of the document, we recommend that the Budget and Finance Subcommittee is invited to consider more permanent funding for this component of the Sponsored Delegates Programme moving forward. On the basis that there is no additional funding at this point in time, we can agree that it is not possible to provide support under the Sponsor Delegates project for non-committee member delegates to attend meetings of the Animals, Plants and Standing Committees. We also support the Secretariat's recommendation to expand the Sponsor Delegates program to the Standing Committee meeting by supporting the participation of developing country parties subject to an Article 13 process. And we propose here we could limit the number to 2 supported delegates for each party. However, we do not agree to deleting Decision 18.12 in its entirety as proposed by the Secretariat. One of the improvements the Secretariat seeks in paragraph 22E is the improved communication of selection criteria and procedures to parties. 18.12 includes important selection criteria, and in our view, it would be preferable to keep the criteria in this decision or, as an alternative, move the criteria to Resolution Comp 17.3 Rev COP 19 on the Sponsored Delegates Program. These clear selection criteria are important to ensure transparent and efficient process. For Oceania, the reference to small island developing states is of particular relevance, and we would like to see this retained. We also suggest a new criteria could be added to allow direct participation in CITES meetings by delegates from developing parties that have joined the convention recently, for example, within the previous decade. Thank you.
Thank you, New Zealand. I now open the floor to observer parties for comments on the document. Observer organizations, the floor is yours for comments on the document. Okay, 1 second. Okay, we have a few more folks who wish to provide some comments. First, the United States.
Thank you, Chair. We appreciate the comments we've heard here with regard to the very helpful comments from New Zealand. We think it would be useful to consider them further in the discussions of the Finance and Budget Subcommittee and suggest that that might be a way to address them rather than here in plenary. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, United States. I give the floor to Canada.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Like our colleagues from the United States, we also do appreciate the comments heard here. I think we can agree with the potential amendment proposed by Belgium to include the words "as far as possible." We also wanted to react to the comments from New Zealand, and apologies, we're trying to follow quickly. I understand that New Zealand in particular, on behalf of Oceania, was interested in retaining parts of Decision 18.12, noting the useful advice provided in there regarding the application of clear criteria, including prioritization of small island developing states. I wonder if this being an ongoing piece of advice, it might be suited for the resolution we have on sponsored delegates. And if the committee thought that was useful, another approach might be to ask the Secretariat to consider how it might incorporate those more long-standing elements of Decision 18.12 into the existing resolution and perhaps bring that back to the committee even at its next meeting, if that's useful. And in that way, we could potentially remove the decision if the active parts of the decision have already been undertaken. So that's one suggestion on that approach. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Canada, very much for that suggestion. Any additional comments? Okay, I'm going to turn to the committee now for honing in on these recommendations. And so I haven't heard any opposition to the inclusion of 2 delegates in recommendation B, or any opposition to recommendation C and the addition of as far as possible by Belgium. Okay, so the committee agrees to the recommendations in document SC 77, document 14, recommendation A, recommendation B, as edited, that reads, recommends to the Conference of the Parties to expand the sponsored delegate project to the Standing Committee only to support the participation of 2 delegates of developing country parties subject to Article 13 process, possibly by maintaining Decision 19.10. And then also agrees to recommendation C with the edits from Belgium so that it reads, encourage parties to make their financial contribution to the sponsored delegate project as early as possible for maximum use and preferably no later than 5 months before the meeting of the Conference of the Parties. And as far as possible with flexibility regarding the use. Okay, and then for recommendation D, I would like to hear the committee's thoughts on the proposal from Canada, as well as the proposal for the United States, to move that to the Finance and Budget Subcommittee. So there's 2 proposals. One would be for the Secretariat, this is a proposal from Canada, for the Secretariat to look at Decision 18.12 and consider some of the long-standing aspects of that decision and the appropriateness of incorporating those aspects into Resolution 17.3, Rev Comp 19. And then the other proposal was from the United States to refer this recommendation D to the Finance and Budget Subcommittee, which will be meeting during this meeting, and they could provide some guidance or a proposal of a way forward when they report out back to the committee. So Standing Committee, I'm looking to you guys for your thoughts, or if there's an alternate proposal. I give the floor to Switzerland.
Thank you, Chair. I think it would be a good idea to give it back to the Secretariat, and that the Secretariat comes to the next Standing Committee meeting with a proposal which long-standing issues might be incorporated into the resolution. I think this is a good way forward. So we will have a document to look at before and make our thoughts about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Switzerland. I give the floor to New Zealand.
Thank you. We agree with Switzerland's comments here. I'm just got one query, is we made another suggestion about additional criteria, which was to encourage new developing parties to attend the COP, and so adding a criteria to that effect was another one of our recommendations that I haven't heard a response on. Thank you.
So that new criteria could be considered by the Secretariat as well in the proposal that you guys are both agreeing to have the Secretariat look at the decision and the resolution. Is that acceptable? Any other thoughts from the committee? Okay, so for recommendation D, the committee agrees to have the Secretariat review Decision 18.12, looking at the long-standing aspects as it refers to the sponsored delegates project, and also reviewing Resolution 17.3 for the appropriateness of adding those long-standing aspects of the decision into the resolution and taking into consideration the new criteria as proposed by New Zealand, and to report back to the committee at the next regular meeting, SC 78. Does that work for the committee? That's what the committee agrees to. Okay, thank you. All right, next up is agenda item 15, arrangements for the 20th meeting of the Conference of the Parties, and I will turn the floor over to the Secretariat.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We would like to inform the Standing Committee that we still do not have a host for COP20. There have been some questions and approaches to the Secretariat about costings and what it entails, but at this point we do not have any offers, any official offers to host COP20. We would need to have a host by March of next year to be able to do all the planning necessary, both with a host and without a host. Because as you know, we do not have a budget set aside for CITES core budgeting for any preparations for COP. So we would have to be able to work on how we would be able to get the financial resources needed to host a COP. We have reached out already here in Geneva to the United Nations Office of Geneva to find out what meeting rooms would be available in 2025, late 2025, at the Palais des Nations. We're communicating with them now. They're trying to find ways to see if they can host us there. And again, we have been writing letters on the part of the Secretariat to different possible host countries. Again, a couple of them have asked us questions, but unfortunately, still no responses. So I encourage you to think of even innovative ways in which we can have a COP, which could mean that several countries get together, several parties get together and decide on a host country, pooling together resources, or any other way in which we could possibly host a COP in 2025. Of course, if we have no host, we will have to hold it here in Switzerland. And as we have looked before, you may recall that in 2019, we had the emergency where we had to have our COP18 here in Geneva. We went out to look for possible places where it could be held. The problem is that we don't have here conference rooms large enough in most conference centers in Switzerland that could hold a number of participants for COP. The only way we could do it is possibly, again, if we could get some of the larger rooms in the Palais des Nations. And finally, here at the CICG, where we would have space where we usually do set aside space in case of an emergency, the problem will always be, again, accommodating two committees at the same time with the numbers of people that we have. So I ask you, please, if you could help us in thinking of these innovative ways in which we can host a COP by joining together and choosing one host country. But we will need to make some final decisions around March, because normally it would have had to be presented here at this standing committee to agree on the host country. Since that hasn't happened, If there were a host to come forward, we would have to have a session of the Standing Committee, probably as we did for Panama, online to discuss the offer. But if by March we do not have any offers, we will have to take steps then to see how we would organize a COP here in Switzerland. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Secretariat. So I open the floor for comments from the members of the Standing Committee on agenda item number 20. Next, observer parties. Opening the floor for observer organizations. I give the floor to you, New Zealand.
Thank you. We just want to acknowledge the depository government and Switzerland's hosting, and that we're getting increasing numbers of meetings held in Geneva, and that adds increasing pressure that we just want to acknowledge for the depository government. Thank you.
Thank you, New Zealand. Okay, as the chair, I do invite all parties to consider offering to host COP20, which is scheduled to take place in the first half of 2025, second half of 2025. And also thanks to the depository government of Switzerland for being so hospitable to the CITES Convention. And so the committee notes the information provided by the secretary and invites the secretary to keep the standing committee informed of any progress. Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda is agenda item number 23, capacity building. We will start with document 23.1, implementation of resolution comp 19.2 on capacity building. Standing Committee 77, document 23.1, Rev 1. I give the floor to the Secretariat.
Thank you, Chair. The present document, SC 77, Doc 23.1, has been prepared by the Secretariat. The document summarizes the Secretariat's capacity building activities since COP19, which includes supporting more than a dozen parties at the national level and a number of regional and sub-regional activities. With regard to the master's course on Management and Conservation of Species and Trade, organized by the International University of Andalusia, the Secretariat issued notification to parties number 2023-059 on 10th of May 2023, followed by notification number preceded by notification 2023/038 on 27th of March 2023. These called for financial support towards offering scholarships to participants from CITES authorities from developing country parties, as well as for nominations of course participants who are interested in receiving the scholarships. As of 31st of October 2023, which was the deadline for pre-applications, the Secretariat received requests from more than a dozen countries for scholarships that were endorsed by their respective national CITES authorities. This far exceeded the current financial availability for about 3 or 4 scholarships. The Secretariat is currently in discussion with the master's course coordinators to determine how to select the participants who will receive the scholarships, but we will also continue to look for additional funding to make other participants who are requesting scholarships to be able to take part in the course. The Standing Committee is invited to take note of document SC 77, Doc 23.1, Rev 1. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Secretariat. So I'll open the floor to Standing committee members for comments on Doc 23.1, Rev 1 first. Any comments from the standing committee? Opening the floor to observer parties who would like to comment on the document. Next, opening the floor to any observer organizations that would like to comment on the document. With no comments, the Standing Committee notes document SC 77, Doc 23.1, Rev 1. Next, we will discuss document 23.2, report by the Sudan. I would like to give the floor to Sudan. Just noting that I don't believe the Sudan is in attendance. And so I will open the floor to committee members who have comments on the document. Next, to observer parties, any comments on the document? And lastly, to observer organizations, any comments on the document? Document 23.2. Okay, with no comments, the committee notes document SC 77, Doc 23.2. Next, for the next item, 23.3, Capacity Building Framework, SC 77, Doc 23.3. I'm going to turn to the Secretariat to provide an introduction, and then we will break and we'll resume discussions in the afternoon for the afternoon session. So over to you, Secretariat.
Thank you, Chair. The present document, SC 77, Doc 23.3, has been prepared by the Secretariat. The document summarizes the progress made during the past intersessional period on the need for a CITES capacity building conceptual framework or strategy. We would like to thank the intersessional working group, especially its chair, New Zealand, for their contribution and progress made. With the renewed decision adopted at COP19, this provides an opportune moment to continue with the development of the CITES capacity building strategy, considering that the parties to the Convention on Biological Diversity is discussing on the long-term strategic framework for capacity building and development to support nationally determined priorities for the implementation of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. The Secretariat intends to organize, in consultation with the chair of the Standing Committee, as well as the chairs of the Animals and Plants Committees, and with the chair of the Finance and Budget Subcommittee, subject to the availability of external funds, one or more regional technical consultations that would facilitate the development of an integrated capacity building framework. The Standing Committee is invited to take note of document SC 77, Doc 23.3. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Secretariat. And so we will stop now for the lunch break, and we'll pick up with discussions on the documents and the recommendations found in the documents at 2 o'clock. Thank you. Have a great lunch.